All right, so we are going to continue on our journey through all the different types of histology, all the different types of tissues. All right, so we're on our last type of slide for connective tissue. So we can group blood as a type of fluid connective tissue, and so blood is the last type of connective tissue we're going to talk about. And so I put it over here. It's in fluid connective tissues. We could also include lymph as a fluid connective tissue, but it's not often examined, and so we're really just going to be looking at what blood looks like under the microscope. So as you can see, we've got different red blood cells and some different types of white blood cells. And what's kind of cool about blood, though, is with most of the other types of tissue we looked at, it's like an actual, it's a solid tissue that we had to embed in wax and cut and section and then put on the slide and then stain. With the blood stain, you actually do what's called a blood smear. And so we can see a blood smear is going to look like this, where you take a little dot of blood in the middle of the slide and you actually just run it along. You take another slide and smear it out. And so you're going to look at sort of the feathered edge over here, and this is where we're going to be looking at the zone of best morphology. So different areas in the blood smear are going to be better to look at. But basically we're smearing all the blood cells across the slide, and then you're going to fix them and then stain them just like you would. And for this, the blood smears are usually stained with a different type of stain. So they're, instead of the like H&E, which is pretty common for other tissue specimens, they're going to be stained with the Romanowski type stain. So usually Wright's stain, sometimes Giemsa, or like a diff quick type of stain can be used like really quick. But so the ones we're looking at today are stained with Wright's stain. And so with blood, it's a fluid matrix, right? And so we're going to have mostly cells. So it's very cellular with just a fluid matrix. And so how closely packed the cells are will depend on where on the blood smear you're looking. So like here, this is not easy. We're not going to be able to look at anything. All the blood cells are right next to each other because they're all together. But we do actually see a lot of white blood cells here, right? Because there's more of them. Whereas the zone of best morphology, this is where we're going to be able to see all of the cells are spread out a little bit. And then at the feathered edge over here, they're really spread out, and we've got lots of white space, but it's not quite as easy to count them, right? They're not as evenly spread out. And so you're going to kind of look over here, the zone of best morphology. And so I'm going to go to this. This is another stain, another slide. And so we can see that most of those cells that we're going to be looking at are going to be red blood cells. And so that's these guys here. They are biconcave. And so the hemoglobin is actually what's going to be taking up the stain. And they have a thinner area in the middle, sort of like, I don't know, Lifesaver, where it's thicker on the out and thinner in the middle. And so you can see there's less hemoglobin in the middle, so it gives it this like central pallor or central white spot. Those are the erythrocytes. So that's the erythrocyte is the technical term for red blood cells. Next we have the white blood cells, which don't actually look very white. They're kind of a purplish color, like even the nucleus, the cytoplasm is like pinkish sometimes, the nucleus is usually purplish, bluish. And so there's a lot of different types of white blood cells. Oh, that looks like a basophil over there. And so this is kind of a picture that shows us some of the different formed elements within blood. We're not going to have to memorize this now, but you will need to be able to memorize them and identify them in 169 when we get to the blood chapter. So it's not a bad idea to start looking now. So these are the red blood cells. These are erythrocytes. Then these are platelets. Platelets are the tiny little guys right here. So you see it's like a fragment of a cell. It's actually little cell fragments, and some of them are bigger and some of them are smaller because they're fragments, and some of them are bigger pieces and smaller pieces. And some of them, if they're activated, might be bigger. And so we have erythrocytes here. They're the big ones. And then the ones smaller than the erythrocytes are the platelets. And we can also call those thrombocytes because they help with blood clotting. And then right now, you don't need to be able to differentiate between these. So these are all white blood cells. I know they don't all look white, but we call them all white blood cells. And so a white blood cell, like the technical term for the group of white blood cells, is a leukocyte. A leukocyte. So we have erythrocytes are red blood cells, platelets or thrombocytes are those little guys that help with blood clotting. And then all these together we can call leukocytes, because leuko means white and cyte means cell. So those are our white blood cell is a leukocyte. And then once we get to 169, you'll have to look and be able to tell the difference between all these different types and identify them on the blood smear. All right, so hopefully you guys blood is pretty distinctive, and hopefully it will be a pretty easy one for you guys to identify on the test.